Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Now, today I am joined by the amazing Dax of What's Under the Bed with Dax. How you doing today, man?
Hi, I'm doing all right. How are you?
I am doing awesome. I am so excited to have you here. But before we talk about why you're here, I would like for the people that don't know you to get to know you a little bit. You run the podcast, What's Under the Bed with Dax. You've had some amazing guests on there. You're tackling horror at a very young age. How long have you been doing the podcast for?
Oh my God, I think 2 years now. Yeah, two
Yeah.
years. It's
And
crazy.
it's
Ugh.
amazing to hear, at such a young age, the perspective that you bring to horror. Me, I'm a quite a few years older than you, so it's inspiring to see. And I'm not trying to talk down on you at all,
No, no.
but to see someone as young as you that is as passionate as you are about the horror genre. So, you've had some amazing guests on the show. What's it feel like when you get that, when you finally get a hold of that person you've been wanting to interview and you get the okay? What's that feel like for you?
Yeah, man, that just recently happened with Kane Hodder. He's the whole reason I even started the show in the first place. And it was it is the best interview we've ever had. And he's so lively, he's so kind. It took a while to get him.
Yeah.
He originally I had seen his documentary and I was like, I want to talk to that guy, to my father. And he was like, well, you can't just talk to him. So let's figure out a reason. And we kind of came up with, hey, why don't we do interviews?
Mhm.
That seems fun. And I met him, I think, at like a virtual convention during the COVID lockdown. And I asked him, hey, how many interviews do I have to have to interview you? And he said, how about five? And then I think 25 later, or 30, how 40? 40? 40 later?
Yes.
40 later. He finally agreed, and it was amazing. I can't believe I wasn't starstruck.
Dude,
But
it's so cool. Like when you finally get that commitment from somebody
yeah,
that, because I'm in the same boat as you. I love to interview people. I love to learn how horror started for people. And there's no better feeling than when you reach out to that person, they're like, yes, I would love to do it. And you're just like, victory,
it really
victory.
is.
Let's do it. And Kane, good for you because he is a great guy. My first horror movie, my favorite horror movie is House from 1985, and he did stunts in that movie.
It's so good. House is
Yeah.
so good. I love House. I love its sequel too. House 2,
Yes.
I quote often.
We were at Horror Hound and we were
Mhm.
getting pictures with William Cat and Kane came in and photobombed us in the background. And just
William Katt's
that.
also amazing.
Oh
Yeah,
yes, he
he's also
totally,
someone I was
totally
able to
great.
interview.
Yes, man. And
Yeah.
when you meet these amazing people that you've looked up to for a long
Yeah.
time, and they're just the nicest, kindest people, it really does help you to know that you're doing the right thing by interviewing these people that mean so much to you.
Yeah, it's crazy. I would have never expected all the killers to be the nicest people around.
It's so funny because a lot of people look at horror as like this taboo type of thing,
Yeah.
but when you start talking to the people that are behind the scenes and the actors, the producers, the directors, the writers, they're the sweetest, kindest, most gentle people you could ever hope to interact with. And like I said, when you have someone that's younger that's still so entranced and enriched in the genre, it shows how open arms people are. To it
Yeah.
doesn't matter your age or your religion or your gender or your sex or anything like that. The minute you want to talk about horror, that's what we're about. We just want to
Yeah.
talk horror with you. So um, I know that you were talking about, Kane Hodder and some of the other amazing guests that Dax has had. The best way you can listen to that is by checking the podcast out. And I have all the links down in the description. So make sure you're subscribing to the podcast. Make sure you're leaving it the most rave review, ranking it 5 stars because it absolutely is a 5 star show. So make sure you're doing that. And I also have Dax's social media links for the podcast down there as well. So make sure you're following him on social media so you can stay up to date on every single guest that he's going to be having here in the future. Because I promise this is just the start. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to engage in conversation and he knows how to keep you, the listener, involved as well. So make sure you're checking the podcast out. You're not going to regret it. But Dax, in order for you to do What's Under the Bed with Dax and have such a great podcast about horror, horror had to start for you somewhere. So
Yeah.
now, my friend, I would like to go back to the past and talk about what got you started in the horror genre, your first horror movie. And Dax, your first horror movie was
Yeah, well, it's a little convoluted for me. Technically, my first horror movie was Wolfman, but I do not remember a single bit about it because I was very, very young. Um,
right.
then my dad likes to say Blob was my first movie, but I don't count it for myself because I didn't finish it, and it scared the bejesus out of me, and I couldn't finish it for years. So Jaws was the first movie I ever finished.
Nice. And I do got to ask, when you're talking about the Blob, was it the OG one from
The
the 50s or?
OG one, yeah. Steve McQueen, everybody.
Yes, man. And again, Wolfman, The Blob, these movies would be great ways to start off your horror life too. And what I love about these
Absolutely.
is all three of these, whether it be The Wolfman, The Blob, or Jaws, we're talking about three amazing creature features. And I know that's up for debate and argument with The Blob, but
It's
Blob is
amazing.
totally a
It's
creature.
amazing.
So Jaws, like I said, would that be in your first horror movie? It's a special movie that I
It
think
is.
feels so important today with a lot of the undertones that come along with that movie. But do you remember about how old you were the first time you had seen it?
Um, was it 6 or 7? It was either 6 or 7. I was young. I was very young.
Old enough to be like, I don't want to go in the water after watching this.
Actually, I was never actually afraid afterwards of the
Nice.
water. There's actually, my dad tells this story a lot, and I remember it vividly. Um, when the shark jumped out of the water for the first time, I pointed at the screen and said, "Now that's a fake shark, right?" And my dad was so proud of me for saying that
Right.
because we're in a film family, so he was very happy that I could understand and separate the movie from real life. And I think that's why I didn't get like traumatized from the water after the movie.
Because you were had the understanding. And see,
'Cause-
I've said this on the
yeah,
podcast before. I feel like people that watch horror at a young age, and your dad does a great job of monitoring what you're watching and monitoring who you're talking to. At the same time, educating you on the
yeah,
difference between fantasy and reality at a young age. So that makes you more grounded. I feel like in reality because you understand the difference between fake and real, and that's what I love about people that understand that with their children. I'm not a psychiatrist by any stretch of the imagination. I don't have every answer, but I feel like if you let your kids watch horror at a young age, as long as they're comfortable with it and you
yeah.
educate them, then they're going to be more grounded in reality. And this, especially with Jaws, because it is very real life. There are sharks. Us as kids, we love swimming. So we know you were very young. You watched it with your dad for the first time, which is so dope. Like that's fake, Dad. Don't worry, Dad. I got this. That's fake. You're safe, Dad.
Yeah.
Do you remember which scene it was that did affect you the most?
That affected me the most, probably that same scene in a similar way, but it was the first time I really was like, whoa. Because you gotta imagine, I was 7 years old. The screen wasn't like a small little screen like back in the 80s. It was big. It was a
Yeah.
big screen. I was sitting right in front of it, and it's just whoa. Now that's fake, right? I think it really affected me with how I saw special effects and with how just uh, it grounded my love of movies and
Mhm.
horror and just all of it.
Yeah.
And it's a special movie to me. It very
Oh,
much is a special movie to me.
I've said numerous times there's two movies,
Yeah,
in my opinion, that should never, ever, ever, ever get touched, and that's Jaws and Back to the Future. Leave those movies alone.
I
Let those
agree.
movies, like just let them stay what they are. So we know Jaws is a franchise. There are four films in the Jaws franchise. Some not as good as others. But since we are talking about the franchise, I always ask, what is your favorite film in the Jaws franchise? Is it the first one?
The first one. It's gotta be the first one. It's the
Yeah.
first one. The other ones, I haven't really seen many of the other ones. I think I've seen two, and I think I've seen three. but I barely
You've seen all
remember
you
them.
need to see.
I've seen all I know about four, and
Uh-huh.
I think in four they stab the shark with a boat, and that is insane. That's not how boats work. And I kind of lost it. I kind of lost it from that.
I will say though, honestly, and I feel like this is probably a hot take to a lot of people. The first one is obviously my favorite. I think it's fantastic, but Jaws 2 is a very, very good movie,
Oh,
and I feel like it's
it's
underrated. Like it's,
definitely.
I love that movie. I think there's so many redeeming qualities. It gets a little wonky in three with like the VFX and stuff like that, but Jaws 2 people write it off immediately, and I don't think they should. Guys, give that movie a
No.
chance. But
Yeah, I
uh,
agree. It's a good one. It's very good. First one's still amazing and probably the best. The second one's very good though.
right. And I still think it should have, just like The Exorcist. The Exorcist 3 is my favorite in that
It's the
franchise.
best one. It's
Yes.
one of the best ones. The first one's amazing, spectacular.
Mhm.
Definitely the best film of the franchise. Two sucks. Three? Now three.
See,
That
3's
that
my
is a
favorite,
good
dude.
movie.
Yes.
It's amazing.
It's just, I think 1 is the scariest movie of all time. 2 is the worst movie of all time. And 3 is just like my favorite in that franchise. So I agree with you completely in your, oh, The Exorcist 2, that's a rough one for me. But we know how I feel. But we're not here to talk about me, Dax. We're here to talk about
Definitely.
you. In Hollywood, remakes, requels, sequels, that is all the rage. People love
Yeah.
that right now. Would you like to see them make an attempt at Jaws today?
Hell no. No, don't touch that. Don't no. No, no, no,
You,
no, no. Maybe if Spielberg was 100% a part of it, that would be the only time where I'm like, okay, give it a shot. But
sure.
even then, you can't. You really can't. It won't be the same. It's like if you friggin' remade Exorcist. You can't remake Exorcist. You
They
can't.
just,
There's magic in that film. You can't. You just can't
right.
do it.
And I
I
agree with you. And
yeah, I
I
even
think,
think that. Sorry.
no, no, go ahead.
I even think that with Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now that's one of my favorite horror movies of all time. Like
Mhm.
it affected me today. It still affects me as I move, like as I watch it again. It's phenomenal, like just work with its photography and all that. Watched the remake. It doesn't work. It's not the same. It's a good movie. I liked the remake.
Mhm.
It's not the same film. It
Sure,
doesn't do the same thing.
sure.
I don't like remakes. There's
Mhm.
some that are good. Evil Dead remake did a whole new thing. It's if you add something to the remake that's
Yes.
worth it, then I'll give you a chance and I'll like it. But if you just make it the same movie again, but a little flashy and a little gorier, bores me. I'm better watch the original that's good.
Right. And not putting a bunch of CGI over
Yeah.
top of the practical that they did in the original. I completely
Yeah.
see, and I think that even the bad remakes have their merits because I know people that had never seen like April Fool's Day, and then the
Yeah.
remake came out, and they're like, "Oh, this is a remake. We need to watch the original." I'm like, "Yes, yes, you do. I agree. Go
Yeah.
watch the original because it's awesome." So I think that remakes can have their merits even if they're bad. But where I will 100% agree with you, do something special. Don't just do a carbon copy, copy and paste of what the original did. Make it your own. Make it worth me spending the money to go and watch it again. So, um, I know you said one of, but I do got to ask because we talked about your first horror movie, Dax, and what that means to you. But my little buddy Ghostface is here, and he does have the question for you. What's your favorite scary movie, Dax? What is
Favorite
your
scare?
favorite horror movie?
Who? Okay, so I'm gonna do two answers for this, but technically one's a show, one's a movie.
Okay,
My favorite horror movie, probably the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I've said
sure.
it. I already said it. It affects me today. It affected me when I first watched it. It's phenomenal. I love it to death. My favorite horror show of all time, and it has not changed since the moment I watched it, is Midnight Mass from on Netflix. It is the best vampire show. It's the my opinion, best vampire thing, media piece. I love that thing. I couldn't stop talking about it when I first watched it. When I watched it for my interview with Alex Esso, by the way, great interview. If you guys want to check that out, it's so good. I love it so much.
Everything about that show, I agree with you. Mike Flanagan has this way about him to make everything so unique, even if it's been done before. And the idea of everything they put into, obviously, there's going to be a lot of Catholicism and stuff like that when you go into with the title of Midnight Mass, but the way that, angels were scary when we had seen them, and now we have an angel with us, and the way that they portray all that stuff. And, Beverly is one of the most despicable characters of all time, and like this show had everything about it. And I'm with you. I think it's absolutely amazing. I think that there's genuine heartbreak throughout the whole show, lessons learned. And one of the saddest moments, I'm not going to spoil it for anybody, but how you have the one lady that's always like, oh, the preacher would always stare at me. I think he always knew I was a lesbian, but that's not the reason that he would always stare at her. And you find that out in the finale episode. And I thought that was a really, really hard hitting episode for me too. So thank you for giving the flowers to Midnight Mass, because that is such an amazing show. And I think that just everything that goes rooted in that show, whether it's the religious aspects or the big, big monologues that you get throughout that show, it's just so special. The cinematography of it being on the island, and yeah, dude, I'm with you.
Yeah, it's amazing. I could talk about it for hours. It
is special. It is very special. And that's one of the things where Flanagan, I feel like everything he touches turns to gold. I can't think of anything Flanagan's ever done where I've been like, it's all right. Even Dr. Sleep. I've been quoted numerous times saying my favorite horror sequel of all time is Dr. Sleep. I think that Flanagan,
so good.
Yeah, and he knows what he's doing. So, man, I've had an amazing time, Dax, talking about your first horror movie and your favorite horror movie. But before I let you go, we always bounce back to the same question. We're going to go back to, we're going to go back to Jaws. And what we're going to do, my friend, is rank this movie on a skull count. Now, we're not ranking Jaws on acting, production, score, direction, nothing like that. We're not being critics. And what we're doing here is ranking this movie strictly on how much it affected you on your first viewing. So 0 skulls being not effective, 5 being extremely effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle. Dex, what would your ranking of Jaws be?
Man, that's a tough one. I'd say I don't think it's 5.
Okay.
For how it affected me, I don't think it was 5. I think there's more movies that affected me more. So that's why I'm going to give it a solid 3 3/4.
Perfect. Just cut off one lower jaw and we're good to go.
Just cut off a little tiny part and
right
we're good
here.
to go.
So, like I said at the beginning, guys, I'm so excited to have Dax here, and I hope that you guys really take it to heart and make sure you're following him. Make sure you are subscribing to the podcast. Those links are down in the description. I promise you, you will not regret it. The guests he's had on are absolutely amazing, and listening to him pick their brains and the excitement that he brings to it, you could tell that it's something every episode you feel like is his first interview because of the excitement that he brings out, not just in himself, but in the guest that he's interviewing. So please make sure you're checking that out, because we are at the end of the third act. The curtain's about to drop and the credits are about to roll. Dax, please don't go anywhere, my friend. I have a couple more questions for you.
Sounds good.
Everyone else, thank you so much for watching. And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. It helps to build the channel more than you know. And follow Sledgehammer Horror on social media. Our links are in the description as well. But until next time, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.